AITA for restricting access to my son from my deceased wife's family. Some backstory: my late wife and I found out she had rare aggressive cancer 3 years before our son was born. She went through numerous surgeries and therapies. She was finally in remission after a year of hell. We thought we were in the clear and we had been trying to have a baby before the cancer diagnosis. But the chemo destroyed her reproductive system. We had a friend that agreed to be a surrogate for us. We agreed to go for it since she had been cancer-free for about a year with clean checkups. About 6 months into the pregnancy, her cancer returned. She started chemo and radiation, but the cancer wasn't responding and the chemo was wreaking havoc on her, knocking her white blood cells down to nothing. We spent numerous days with her hospitalized after every chemo treatment. My wife got to be a mom for 5 months. She was told she had 2 months to live and she passed a month later. During the last month when she was on hospice, her parents were taking care of our son off and on. More on than off since I was taking care of my wife. Hospice only shows up for a few days a week for about an hour at time, so I took off work and took care of her. After she passed, her parents would watch my son while I worked nights, typically 2 nights a week. We consistently had disagreements about his care. They wanted to take him out to eat all time and feed him greasy food at home. Whenever I gave them a restriction, it seemed that they would have a reason they didn't do what I wanted or an interpretation that allowed them to do what they wanted to do. I had to take a trip for work for a month overseas. I could have turned it down, but it was a great opportunity to make a bit more money. I presented the trip to them and told them that I could absolutely turn it down. But it would help me and my son out a lot if I went. They agreed to watch him and told me that I should take the trip. I had one stipulation before I left: that my son not be around my wife's brother. Brief backstory: he has been to prison 3 times in the past for drugs, a convicted felon 13 times over. He was out and saying he was doing well and was clean and not dealing. 3 months before the trip left, he was arrested again and charged with another 12 felonies. Possession, intent to distribute, felony fleeing, and firearms charges. They reluctantly agreed. Mother-in-law said it would be difficult if he wanted to come over, but she would make it work. When I returned from the trip, I go to pick my son up and learn that not only did they not keep wife's brother away from my son, they allowed him and his girlfriend to move into their camper parked on the side of the house. They all had dinner together every night and went out to eat. I had talked to them several times while on the trip and neither of them ever told me that was happening. Her reason was that she knew that I would be mad and she didn't want me to ruin the work trip by trying to come back early. Comment: this is audacity. Your father-in-law needs to get a clue. I realize that having access to their grandchild is very important to them, so I don't understand why they are sabotaging access to your son by being so tone-deaf and entitled. You must maintain boundaries and be firm. It sounds like you are prepared to do that. You are fulfilling your obligation as a father to care and protect your son, and your wife would be proud of you. The Phil is right, actually, but Up can counter that with, "You can't tell me that I have to let my child go to your house." Phil made his choice clear, so now he loses much of his access to the child. This is exactly what you should continue to do. Supervise their contact and don't let them take your son anywhere. They have proven they will not follow your rules for your child. By saying they didn't tell you because you'd come back early, they're admitting they knew you'd be upset, so they purposely lied to you by omission. If they'll lie about that, what else will they lie about? Well, to be fair, your father-in-law is correct, in that you can't tell him who he's allowed to have in his house. What your father-in-law seems to have forgotten: 3 things. 1. Is that you also have the right to decide where your minor child is going to spend time or not spend time, including grandparents' house. 2. That you have every right to decide what people your child is going to spend time with or not spend time with, including his grandparents and felonious uncle. 3. To EFF around is to find out. That's true that you can't tell him what to do. But your Phil is forgetting that actions have consequences. Just like you can't tell him what to do, he can't tell you what to do either. It's a two-way street. So, fine. You can't tell him what to do in his home, then he loses the privilege of seeing your child. He's right, you can't tell him who can and can't be in his house. But you can absolutely make sure your son isn't in his house. NTA, if they won't respect your wishes as a father, you are well within your rights to restrict their access to him as necessary. You aren't letting them take your son places because they've been proven to be untrustworthy. You haven't cut off all contact or anything, you're still letting them see him. Definitely not the Next story 2. AITA for telling my sister her kid is terrible and she needs to start being a good parent. I have a sister. Around 8 years ago my sister got married. She then announced that she was having a baby just about 6 months after her marriage. The first kid she had was a boy. We'll call this kid Cameron. After my sister finished her maternity leave, me and my mom have been watching Cameron. Recently she's been going to a ton of parties. At first, I didn't really mind. I mean, it's hard to have a kid and then try and go back to work as if nothing happened. Now Cameron, who is 8 years old now, has been really getting on my nerves. He's insulted my mom's cooking, refuses to do his homework and talks badly about my sister, which is his mom, since she's rarely around. I remember I had my work open one night, staying up for a late draft because of my English essay. I come back to my room after getting some things from the store. I see my computer's shut off with a sticky note saying I wanted to play Roblox with my friends. I rushed to open my computer and all of my hard work was gone. I'm still in college, I've been studying really hard, but I have to cut up some of my time to watch my sister's kid for her. What's even worse is that her husband is a workaholic and refuses to give up his shifts or breaks to take Cameron even for a second. Now, I have a huge test coming up and none of them want to watch their own child. I still haven't signed into the test center and I only have 2 more days to do so. My sister's been packing for a huge trip to Miami and she insists on leaving Cameron at me and my mom's house. At this point I really wasn't having it. I didn't want to sacrifice my future just for my sister's sake of having fun. I understand that she needs a little break, but I do too, especially when I'm still trying to achieve my goal of getting the job I want with proper education. I went to my sister's house yesterday and I brought her child and dropped him off. She yelled at me immediately saying she was going out and she couldn't take Cameron, so I had to watch him. I turned around and yelled back. I told her that she needs to stop thinking about herself and that she needs to pay more attention to her child. Her kid hardly knows her name. It's ridiculous. She walked over to me and then gives me a little nudge, then starts to beg for me to watch him, saying this is the most important party of her life. I shove her and start rambling about everything I had been so stressed about. I told her that she needed to start being there for her kid, start being a genuine parent, instead of being a deadbeat mother to a kid that acts just like her. I told her Cameron was disrespectful and terrible, then marched off and drove off. She hasn't dropped off Cameron at me and my mom's house today. I am enjoying the peace and I have finally signed the paper I needed to sign to get the date to write my test. I am studying and using my time efficiently now, but I still can't stop wondering if what I said was a little too much. AITA. Comment. As a full-grown adult and as a mother, I cannot wrap my head around why she prioritized parties over her own child. I would understand if there were only a few instances like work or school where she needed you guys to watch the kid, but parties? Seriously? Also, you're still in college. This kid should not be your responsibility at all. You are absolutely not the odd in this, and you're the real adult here, showing concern about her parenting skills and also the father's. Okay, wow, there is so much right here that needs to be addressed. First off, NTA and true, some of your actions may look harsh, but your sister is throwing away her kid and isn't being a parent. Either she learns to take some responsibility or you may get CPS involved. Also, the sister's husband needs to stop it with the extra shifts and see what is going on, because right now this is just a hot mess. Also, you may want to talk with your mother about all of this, because this is seriously spiraling out of control and Cameron's behavior will end up becoming even worse if things don't change. You and your mom seem to be convenient childcare for your sister and her husband. That being said, I notice that your sister's husband is absent from most of this. He is equally responsible for Cameron, and he also should participate in raising his own child. Cameron may be acting out because he's feeling neglected and confused by his parents' absence, both parents' absences. If you're feeling empathetic, after your exam, and if your relationship with your sister has at some point been okay, it might be interesting to question her about what's going on in her life. You say this partying only started recently. I wonder if anything has changed in their marriage or financial situation. Also, I note that you mentioned that Cameron was her first kid. Are there other children of the marriage? Who is taking care of them? Cameron is your sister's responsibility, not yours. You shouldn't be required to watch him so she can have fun. Maybe every once in a while, but her going out often is not okay. As a mom who enjoys having fun as well, I'd never have the audacity to expect my family to put themselves out to take care of my child. That doesn't really answer as to whether he was likely to be able to hear you or not. but if you're shouting about it outside the house for the whole street to hear, it doesn't really matter what he did or didn't hear at the time, one of the neighbor kids will no doubt catch him up on what he missed. So whilst both his parents are neglectful assholes here, I'm judging it Esh for that. The most important party of her life. Your sister is a special kind of her absent husband is no better. You are not Cameron's parent and you are not responsible for watching him. Tell her your babysitting days are over. Auntie A, and enjoy the peace and quiet.